check. Check. Woo. Hot mic, very hot mic. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first town hall for the cell tower, and I'm certain we'll probably have more along the way as the project, assuming it gets approved by the membership for the lease. We'll, I'm sure, have more of these so we can talk about how things are going and moving, because it's going to take a couple years. This is not something that's going to happen right away. I know, darn. But that's why we wanted everybody here, so you could kind of understand what the process is. Melissa's going to introduce herself and explain what the process is, and then you'll be able to ask any questions. So try to hold your questions, I think, until you get through the presentation. And then online, sorry, it'll be hard enough for us to manage the room without trying to answer questions online. You're welcome to send them to me personally if you have questions later. You can send them to Jennifer Emmett, PMC. That's JenniferEmett, PMC @gmail.com, and I'll be sure to get your questions answered. Okay, here comes Melissa. Melissa, right? Okay. Melissa and Melissa.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to the meeting this morning. Hello? Oh, there it is. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Okay, I will. Okay. Let me see. Okay, that's better. Thank you. So as I was saying, Vertical Bridge, they're a tower infrastructure company. So they essentially develop infrastructure, the towers, and they create the setup for carriers to go on there. So that's what makes this project a little bit different than, you know, if it was solely like a carrier tower. This project is specifically designed for co-location. So eventually, T-Mobile is going to start, but eventually the hope is to get all the major carriers on the cell site. And so I am with Assurance Development. We are the applicant representatives. So we are the ones who would be processing the permits. We've been working with Jennifer and the HOA team on getting the lease solidified and finalized. So that's that's the different groups that are involved with the project. And then we can go to the next slide. Here are a few more details about the facility. So the proposal is for an 80-foot tall wireless communication facility. It would be screened as a faux pine tree because of the nature of the surroundings. We thought that a faux pine tree would make a lot of sense within the vicinity. And just a little bit of info here. The facility meets T-Mobile's service objectives by providing in-building wireless coverage and other service improvements to the residential neighborhoods in Pine Mountain Club from Mill Portero Highway, Simmons Road, to Freeman Drive. And I'll show you a coverage map on the next slide where you'll be able to see the full scope of what the facility would be covering. And it would just benefit the surrounding vicinity too, including anyone traveling through the area or visiting. This will improve service in a geographic area not adequately covered by T-Mobile's network at the moment. The facility will allow T-Mobile to provide more reliable wireless service and improve access to additional wireless services for the benefit of residents, businesses, visitors, and first responders. And this includes emergency 911 calls throughout the area. The facility has been designed to support additional wireless providers, reducing the need for additional freestanding facilities in the area. So as I mentioned, the intent of the project is for co-location for other carriers to mount on it as well in the future. This is just a little bit of info, some data about where we are today with wireless and why there's such an important and high demand for it. So the demand for wireless data is expected to grow 20% per year through 2028. 97% of Americans have a cell phone and 85% own a smartphone. 76% of households rely on wireless as their only means of telephone communication. Over 86% of children live in wireless-only households, and over 86% of renters live in wireless-only households. And then 240 million calls are made to 911 in the U.S. each year, and in many areas, 80% or more are from wireless devices. So some of this is just some basic knowledge that I think many of us today have picked up on. A lot of us, if not just about all of us, have cell phones today. And it's just important to keep up with the demand so that the actual cell phone coverage is reliable, especially in a time of need, in a natural or man-made emergency. Go to the next slide. I know it's a little, I have a zoomed in version on the next slide, but these are the coverage maps. And this is something that the RF engineers have created for the project. So essentially what it shows on the right, your left, the existing service provided by surrounding sites. So you'll see that the legend down there, it says, these are essentially terms that T-Mobile uses internally to describe strong, good, fair, and poor coverage. So I know the color is a little off, but the top in-building coverage, that's like a dark green. That represents the strongest coverage that would be provided. And what you'll see on both of these actually is there's other site names to the south and then to the northwest up there. Those are existing T-Mobile facilities, but they're, as you can see, they're a bit too far to cover this area. And so that's why currently there's a deficit in coverage in this specific area of Pine Mountain. And so the dark green, which is in building coverage, represents the strongest. Lime green in building represents good, and then the yellow represents you still get coverage, you still get some bars, but it's, good to fair coverage. And then the gray is basically no coverage at all. So I know it's, like I said, it's a bit hard to see, but essentially where we're going to be locating the tower, there's essentially no coverage. I know there's the Verizon tower, which is why Verizon is the only one that gets coverage in the area. But for T-Mobile, the RF engineers here are showing that it's pretty much what we call like a dead zone. There's no coverage, reliable coverage in the area. So that's why we're really hoping to move forward with this to address that what could potentially be a safety issue. And then to the right, you'll see service improvements with the proposed facility. So that blue, purple, and yellow site number there, it's, I know you can't really see it from there, but it's SV 14209C. That's just what we refer to as the cell tower. That's what we call the site name. And then you'll see almost the entire community will now be dark green, meaning it would have great coverage for T-Mobile. And then on the outskirts, you'll see some lime green. And then even beyond that, you would still see all the yellow that would show fairly good coverage for the entire vicinity, for the entire community. So that's the objective of the project. And according to the RF engineers, that's what would be covered with the cell tower in this specific location. And then this is just a zoomed in version. I know it's a bit hard to see. I do have a copy that I brought if you guys would like to look at it afterwards, or perhaps have it passed around. Yeah. Thank you. So this is a, oh, sorry, it's a, yeah, or they're all together. Sorry. It's a package, sorry. Yeah. So if you keep the 3 pages together, it'll show existing and then proposed, and you can really compare the differences in coverage of what's there now versus.
We'll post this, by the way. We can post it up on our website.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, let them know that we'll post it.
Okay, yes, and it will be posted on the website for anyone else who'd like to view it if you're watching on YouTube or online. So as you can see, this is a zoomed in version showing, as I had mentioned, this would really benefit the residential neighborhoods and also any businesses and visitors and first responders who are within the Pine Mountain Club community. This is the proposed site plan. Currently, we don't have a full set of drawings yet, but of course, once we get to that part of the process, we are in very good and clear lines of communication with Jennifer, and we would pass those on to Jennifer to post a full set of drawings. The full set of drawings would just include like a scope of work and then just an elevation of what the tower would look like. I have later on in the slides, I have a sample elevation so that you guys could get an idea of what the elevation would look like. So this is the monopine. Let's see, can I pull this? I didn't realize that. Oh, it's pretty in there. Yeah, so this, yeah, I think I overheard someone say right now, and that's correct. So the triangular section, that's the tower. And what's the circle that's centered in the middle, that's the actual pole. And then as you can see, there's some sketched, there's like a sketch circle right around that. That is representative of what the pine branches would look like, where those would be located. And then the different squares would be where the equipment would be located. It is a 2,100 square foot lease area, and it would have a 6-foot high chain link fence surrounding it. And we would use an existing access path to reach the lease area. And then fortunately, we thought this would also be a great location because there's a lot of trees to the east of the site, and they actually screen the tower pretty nicely, so it's very densely vegetated. Thank you. All right, next slide, please. So here we have some photo simulations, and I also brought a copy of these that can be passed around. Sam, would you mind? And then will this PowerPoint be included in the, okay, so. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, because I know sometimes just on the screen or even in a printed version, it could be a little pixelated or difficult to see, but once you see the electronic version, I think that'll show an even more clear depiction. But these are some photo simulations, and this is the view from the northwest. So as you can see, there's a significant amount of vegetation. It's such a beautiful area that it actually serves to screen the tower fairly nicely. And then this is another view from the northeast, and you can see that the aerial map at the top. Oh, if you can go to the next one, yeah. The aerial map at the top shows, if you see that marker right there, that B, that shows where the photo is taken from. So the view is directly from that. This is specifically from Mill Potrero Highway, looking northeast. Next one. And here is another view, also from Mill Potrero, but a little more west. Again, you'll see that C that indicates the view from which the photo was taken. And one more here, that's view D. That is from Aleutian Drive, which would actually be the access route to reach the site. And as you can see, it's virtually just not visible from this specific view. So because it's a really ideal area because there's just so much dense vegetation. So the screening would work out really nicely for aesthetic purposes, the existing screening. So here's just a little bit of info on the radio emissions, and I have one more handout for you guys. This is this is what we call an FCC compliance memo, and this was created by the T-Mobile RF engineer, and he signed off on it as well. So I know that there could oftentimes be concerns just about how the RF emissions would impact anyone who's nearby or surrounding, but for every cell tower that we have, for both Vertical Bridge and T-Mobile, there's a lot of, I guess, what we call checks and balances for ensuring that the tower it has to meet all FCC federal requirements for emission. There are, again, many reports that are done throughout the process. This is one of the first reports that we create, and it's typically something that we submit as part of our use permit. So what I have here, that first paragraph is actually just what's the intended scope of work. It's not quite solidified yet, but this is the typical scope of work of what we would include on the tower. And then at the bottom of that paragraph is the different types of frequencies that the RF engineer would be proposing for the tower. And then this second paragraph is essentially just stating that based on these frequencies, it does meet the FCC standards for power density, and it does not exceed the maximum permissible exposure limits at any location for the ground level of the tower. So, additionally, this very last note says that T-Mobile will be providing proper signage as necessary to meet FCC and Occupational Safety and Health Administration regulations. So, so just to elaborate on that a little bit more, the county, in this case it's Kern County, that would be processing our use permits. They typically, even after we process the use permit application, as part of a condition of approval, they'll include a monitoring condition in place where a professional has to go out there and test for how much is being emitted with the tower after it's built. So it definitely is not something that can go under the radar for exceeding any permissible limits. And if we go to the next slide, which is my final slide, here I just want to show you guys, this is an example of an 80-foot tower. It is a eucalyptus and not a pine, but it's essentially the same idea. And as you can see, it's an 80-foot tower as well. There's T-Mobile would be going at the very top, and then there would be space already reserved for 2 future carriers, which typically come on pretty quickly after the tower is built. And this is a sample of an RF report that we had to produce for this project. Again, it's just a sample. It's not specifically for the Pine Mountain project. But as you can see, with a very similar tower at 80 feet in height, the study results showed, and this is by a third-party vendor, so it's not specifically from T-Mobile, which again helps with the whole checks and balances of it all. For a person anywhere at the ground, the maximum RF exposure level due to the proposed T-Mobile operation, including the contribution of microwave antenna, is calculated to be 0.84 microwave. I can't really read that part, but essentially 11% of the applicable public exposure limit. So that's well below, 89% of what the FCC would allow for cell towers or any kind of radio frequency emissions. So that's just a little explanation of that. And my next slide is just the conclusion of it. So in conclusion, the proposal demonstrates that T-Mobile has a significant gap in service in this area. The proposed location is the least intrusive alternative to fill the significant gap, and the facility will operate in compliance with federal safety standards. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thank you all so much for being patient with the microphone and listening to a bit about the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point. Yes. Yeah, those are great questions. Thank you. Well, the way it works is that essentially at the very beginning stage, T-Mobile or whichever carrier we're working with, they give us what's called a search ring. So that can look like a circle or a polygon of where they are in need of coverage. And so they gave us that area of need, and from there, we reach out to different parcels. Ideally, those at the center are the perfect ones. And as you can see through the coverage maps, this is exactly the area that we're trying to address. So we, of course, reached out to Pine Mountain Association and connected with Jennifer pretty quickly after with regard to whether the community would be open and consider and whether, we can proceed with a lease for securing a tower in the area. So we did get interest from the Pine Mountain Club Association and have been probably talking to Jennifer for several months now, almost a year. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, but it's okay because we know that this is a community, as you can see, that really needs it, and so it's a safety concern that we have here that we really want to address for not just T-Mobile customers, but all other carriers as well. So that's how we got that far.
I would love to take credit, but I think, honestly, I think it reached out to Todd, Bryson first, and we could just call the clubhouse, and they started the ball rolling, and I'll have to, I
Yes. Thanks for clarifying, Jennifer. So that's kind of how we came here, and everything, we've been carefully working through the lease and the design and the location, and I believe someone had asked about the location earlier. That's a location that that's a location that we came with together, and whenever we can work with the landlord, as long as it meets, the county or city requirements for setbacks and height, we love to do that. Like, we love to locate where the landlord would prefer us to go. So,
was a different site originally.
yeah. Yeah, and we appreciate the suggestions. At this point, like I said, the drawings have not been developed yet, so I would suggest, we can certainly explore it. I don't know if you can perhaps do like a map and maybe a circle or an X or an area, maybe send that to Jennifer and she'll pass it along to us and we can find out if that would work. There's a lot of different contributing factors as to why we choose a specific location. That includes access and, of course, coverage and whatnot, and also, depending on if it works for the owners. So we certainly are open to considering that, and that's why we wanted to have a really early meeting with the community to make sure all questions and comments are thoroughly considered. So we can definitely look into that. And I believe, sir, I apologize, I didn't answer that second question about expediting. We are, I just gave Jennifer a letter of authorization, which is kind of going to be our ticket to go into the county and submit our use permit application. We have done a lot of work with Kern County and have had several towers approved throughout the county, so we're very familiar with the process. I would say typically they turn around pretty quickly, around 3 months to get us to an approval. And then after that, we have to go through the building permits, which is typically about another 2 months. So we are certainly in the interest of expediting as well.
Quite honestly, it's our fault. It's taking longer because our full council recommended rather than just having it more designed. That's what we got. I think all 9 of us finally agree on one thing, and I think this was it. We would love to do it sooner, but the lawyer was very concerned without involving you in such a long meeting that it's only fair to have it.
Yes? Yes, sorry.
It's coming with the ballot, the annual ballot.
Yes? Mhm. Mhm. It's okay. It's yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I think it does vary. I mean, anywhere you go now, I think in the US you're gonna see variations of the different faux trees. It varies based on when they were built, on the who the tower manufacturer is. With regard to if we're going the tree path, there is the faux pine, which we thought would fit in nicely in the area, but there's also like mono eucalyptus trees with that have different types of branching. And what we can do, if it helps, Jennifer, we can send it samples from the tower company. We have photos. I should have. I wish I would have thought of bringing them this time, but I could certainly send them to you so that you guys can take a look, and that can be part of the consideration. Changing the design of the tower is typically not an issue if that's what the community prefers, and certainly, I mean, I don't know your name, but this gentleman makes a great point. Sometimes the monopole does fit better, and we can also provide different photo simulations with the different designs if that's what the community would like to see, and if that would help with the vote. That can be after it's approved, perhaps before we submit our use permit. We'd prefer that. That way we design our zoning drawings accordingly. Yes? So I am, yes. I'm specifically representing Vertical Bridge and T-Mobile. As you could imagine, it's a lot of different moving parts, and I'm handling essentially pushing the, working with Jennifer on the leasing side and then pushing the application through the planning department, but I can attempt to answer any questions and Yeah, that's a good question, and I know there's been a lot of buzz about Starlink recently, with good reason. You know, the commercials are currently out there and whatnot. But what I would say to that is all. That is not anything that we can confidently rely on today or this year even. It's all something that's being worked on and tested on. Like you said, you're sort of the you're agreed to test on it, and that's awesome to see what the future capacities and capabilities would look like. But at this time, we don't have like a secured plan for where Starlink will be located, or even if it's going to be how it would look. Let's say, you know, if let's say, I don't know, maybe 600 or 700 members of the community all had T-Mobile. One of the concerns about sometimes the tower coverage is if it's too many users at one time, it clogs, it's sort of like a drain, it clogs the capacity. That's why typically when there's emergencies, you get a deadline because everyone's trying to make phone calls in that moment. So this is something that we can secure tangibly in the very, very near future. So it is, Starlink is, you know, it's a great project that is sort of looks into the future, but it's not, we don't have any tangible data on it at this moment. So the RF maps, the coverage maps that I showed you don't reflect Starlink because it's just, it's simply not capturable at the time, at the moment.
So before you answer any questions online, they're asking.
Oh, gotcha. Should I go back? Okay, moving forward. Okay, I saw the gentleman with the black jacket. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So the question was there are individuals from the community who are concerned about the EME emissions, the RF radio frequency emissions, and there's a question as to whether we can provide resources, perhaps directly from T-Mobile, showing that this tower won't go out beyond the FCC limits and that it'll meet the requirements for safety for radio emissions. So the answer to that is yes. I can, there are some general resources from that T-Mobile uses from different studies. Another thing that I can do is I can, since I'm in direct contact with the client Vertical Bridge, I can inquire about perhaps doing a more thorough study, an EME report that's basically outlines and explains all of the questions that you just had about, you know, individuals who work around the area, individuals who are passing through the area, and what the safety limits are for anyone who would basically be near the tower. I can certainly look into that and see if that's a report that we can provide to help with those concerns. I will ensure that I give resources of some kind to further address that concern.
And just for a heads up, I did from a altitude wise where we all go in the circle. That's about 200 meters. Of course, if you hit the bottom, not at the top, like it's another 80 feet up, right? At the top of the tower, and then as it comes down. So it's I'm thinking at a minimum, it's
Yeah, and just to add to that too, the sample that I showed, this one right here, this tower is actually much closer to commercial buildings, and a lot of individuals are in much closer proximity to the tower, and even with that, it's only 11% of the applicable exposure limit. So we will definitely work on providing some additional resources for that. Yes, I saw the gentleman with the purple. Oh, it's okay. We'll go for here and there. We'll get to everyone. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot, there's a lot more involved when we're talking about a cell site and people working with our as he was saying, it's more around the funneling has to be useful, and if you don't provide enough bandwidth for us to have people the way it was described to me is a much longer term. It could be 10 years ago, and you don't know how long it's going to have enough. So that's the way. I know Vicki had her hand up. I don't.
Yes, we will get to everybody. Thank you for your patience. Yeah, so the question is, will the tower serve for coverage in the dead zones of Mill Potrero Highway to the east, right? So again, this is the, I guess I know that this is Mill Potrero all throughout there, and as you can see, it reaches pretty far east. This is what coverage would look like. So you're saying potentially finding a place for the tower to the east? Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you can see here, I mean, it's a great question, and I think ideally the tower, I mean, T-Mobile wants to serve as much coverage as possible. Typically, these towers will reach, you know, about a half a mile or a quarter of a mile to a half mile radius. So what they're really primarily focusing to address at the moment is the residential homes right south of Mill Potrero Highway. So that is the coverage objective at the moment. But again, these maps are theoretical, and this is based on, you know, the best type of coverage. Of course, there's always things that could come up, including like how many users are using it at the moment, or you know, what the weather will look like. But it's this is the best location to address T-Mobile's RF coverage objective. And you know, if in the future it's determined that there's still a need, then they would potentially look for a tower, you know, further east to address that location. So the question is, have we pinged the homes? You said which area? So, yeah. hmm Thanks for pointing that out. So, um, again, this is showing what the tower would cover, you know, in if it were installed in the current location and with the current height. Where you had just pointed to, that's actually what we call, or what they call internally, in-building coverage. The dark green represents strong to, you know, great coverage. So, and then around it, I think we see some lime green coverage, which again is very good coverage, and the yellow is fair coverage. It's fair, and still, you know, you'll have bars, enough bars to use the cell phone services. So the area where you located, according to the RF engineers from T-Mobile, would actually be addressed well with the new tower. Yes. Yeah. So we, yeah. So the question. Thank you. The question was, what is used for backup power if in a case where the tower were to go out of power? So as you can see, in one of the slides, I showed a sample scope of work, which is most likely what we would be proposing. In areas where we anticipate outages, or, you know, perhaps this area would be a good location just because of the extreme weather conditions, we do a backup diesel generator. With regard to, that's what's used to automatically power the tower in case of an emergency. In terms of the details of how long that lasts, I can get back to you on that, because I would have to double check with the manufacturer to see what the length is of how much, you know, how long that would last. So I will double check on that for you. Yeah, so the question is, what would the time be to ensure that power gets back onto the tower? Again, the backup diesel generator will be, again, this is tentative scope of work, but we would most likely do a backup diesel generator in this area because of the weather conditions. So that would be the immediate response for ensuring that the tower continues to run. Um, yes. Oh, I see what you're saying. To refill it, yeah. I can look into that and get an answer to you. Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 And that's right. So that's why we think this would be a really ideal and great location. And as you mentioned, this is our good start to start addressing the area. If you know in the future, T-Mobile, they're constantly moving forward. I mean, they're only going to continue. So if they determine that, oh, this area to the south still has a lot of dropped calls and needs some coverage, then we would then come back and consider locating on a parcel, you know, that would meet those coverage needs. So it's an ongoing process, and this is definitely not the period for what T-Mobile would be doing in the area. They definitely want to make sure there's proper infrastructure in place in case of, you know, just for day-to-day use or in case of an emergency. So, yeah, I believe I saw the gentleman with the brown first. From the bottom to the top, meaning, oh, I see. Yeah. Gotcha. I see what you're saying. So the question is, so yeah, the way it works is essentially, oh, thank you. I keep forgetting. I need a sign to not forget. So the question is, how does it work with the carriers that will be locating on the vertical bridge tower in terms of just agreements and, you know, any future lease or legal agreements that happen once other carriers start to co-locate. So, and generally speaking, the way it works is that Vertical Bridge, like I said, they're the infrastructure company, so they essentially create a space and a tower, and that's why when you when I showed you the site plan, there's like four different boxes on the or there's actually 5 different boxes shown within the 2,100 square foot site plan, and I could ask Jennifer to switch it to that slide in a minute, but it's because the entire facility is already designed for future carriers. So it wouldn't be expanding in the future. They would just be using what's already there. That includes the equipment space. And essentially, the long and short of it is that the carriers would be like tenants. We call them tenants to Vertical Bridge, to the tower. The details of those agreements they all vary, and I don't even have direct access of what that looks like. We're just working on the leasing and agreement for the infrastructure part of it. Well, currently there's a lease that we are working through with the HOA, and that's what we've been having several meetings with Jennifer and the board and the legal contact. Oh, okay, thank you. To iron out the fine details, those lease contracts do vary, and that's what we're still currently working through. But that is something that we have been working on for the last several months with Jennifer and the HOA, and that's part of, the vote for the 34 years. That's a part of the agreement to decide, for the HOA to decide whether that would work for the community. So I think if there's any more additional detailed questions, Jennifer would be able to answer those as it relates to the lease. Yeah, and the comment was essentially it'd be great to have more time to consider all things prior to making a decision, right? I believe that what's going to be on the ballot is actually going to be just on the whether the 34 years for the lease term is acceptable to the community. So there will likely be, it's not the final vote, right?
Originally, when this was negotiated, they were the only ones that came forward, and they were the ones that requested to put up a tower. So at that point, we've had other companies come out here, and nobody's offered to try to do this for us. So yes, we could probably go out and look further for other options. So what we did instead, we consulted with a cell tower company consultant who told us whether or not this was a decent lease or not, so that we're not signing into something that's not what the industry standards are currently. So we're not signing something like, for example, that tower over on Linden Lane, we get $0. I think it's like $100 a year lease for Verizon. Verizon pays nothing, hardly. I don't know what they're paying Kern, because Kern County erected it. But we're not, I read the contract and it was like, who the heck signed this? Because there's actually no payments for us other than like $100 a year for 30 years. We got nothing. So what we did was we called out to a consultant who goes across the country and advises companies like us. Are we getting a good deal? Is this a reasonable contract? Or is there something we could get more? And there was part of that as the negotiation of the cost of the lease. So we didn't just blindly go do it. We wanted an expert to help us choose whether this was a good company to go with and whether this was a reasonable lease. Does that help? And then after that, we took it through our insurance agency, and then we took it also through our legal department to review the contract. Well, you're not going to be voting on anything specific. That's the point. You're going to only be voting that you've given the authority to the board to negotiate contracts, and that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. We negotiate the contracts. The community and the members don't negotiate contracts. So we have taken our done our due diligence, searched out to make sure that we're getting a deal and that it's a reasonable deal of what's being handed out across the entire country, and going with our expert recommendations. Yeah, well, and again, right now we're still in the negotiation and haven't signed the contract. So there is even a chance that we could request more money at this point. But our consultant said it's reasonable. It's reasonable for what's out there. After we sign the contract, then you can always request to see a copy of the contract. That's the way associations work. I'm sorry if you're not happy with that direction, but this is how associations work. You give the directors, and right now, most the directors have agreed that it's a good deal. They have all seen it. They have all agreed that this is a reasonable contract to negotiate into, and that they are happy with voting on it. All 9 of us have agreed that it's a reasonable direction to go. So the only concern was that we wanted members to agree to the length of the contract, but we've negotiated what we feel is a very strong membership. It's something that's going to benefit us. You know, we will get a deposit, we will get a monthly income, and we will also get an increase over time. So every year we will be getting more and more income as the year goes by. So, you know, it's not a stagnant contract with, 30 years at a set rate. We will be continuing to get increased income over time. So again, this was what the negotiation has been. It's been a very strong contract that's standard across the industry.
Thank you, Jennifer. And, like Jennifer said in the beginning, there's no limit to community meetings. So, this is our first, and we will likely be coming back for more meetings as the community sees fit. Yes? Yeah, so as you can see through the coverage map, again, the blue, purple, and yellow is where the proposed tower would be located. And at that location, they're really trying to get all the residential neighborhoods to the south and even to the east there. This would be the ideal location to meet that coverage. Yeah. So the question is, can the tower be relocated to be further away from residential? If the tower were to be further from where it's currently located, like further away from residential homes, the coverage map would not look like this, and it would compromise the coverage objective for T-Mobile. Yeah, access is another piece to it. Yeah. So again, just to touch on your first question, if with regard to the tower relocation being further away from residencies, access is a big thing. As I showed earlier, we are using an existing access path. Yeah, we're using the Aleutian Drive Street to access the facility. I think so a tower typically covers, this is the predicted coverage, so it's not like this is exactly, 100% what it's going to look like. It's what it's anticipated to look like, and that's why T-Mobile and Vertical Bridge are so eager to invest in a location like this, because it would provide fairly good coverage. The towers typically reach about, like I said, strong coverage is about 1/4 of a mile to maybe half a mile radius. So the further you get from that, the more compromised coverage you would get for the ideal objective area. Yeah, it's just the capacity of the antennas and the tower. Yeah, it's just what the antennas are able to cover. Yeah. So when the sound and the noise at this time, like I said, we're still determining whether there's going to be a diesel generator on there for emergencies. The likelihood of it is, I would say it might be high just because of the weather conditions, but that would really be the only equipment that would emit any kind of noise. And the noise that comes from the diesel generators is typically louder than yeah, the antennas don't make noise, and the equipment itself, they do not produce noise. No. No, there would not be any of that. No, it doesn't produce noise. The antennas and the equipment itself does not produce noise. The only equipment that would produce noise is the emergency generator, and even with that, there's ways to kind of work around that to make sure that the noise is minimized as much as possible. I think that would be a question for Jennifer. So
They're voting for the cell tower at the time of election, and that's when you're approving it. So people that are signing, I'm not saying they won't, because we won't have actually signed the contract until the vote happens. So it could be that the new board members will agree with it. So it'll be nice to hear during the meeting how they feel about it.
yes.
It's a 200 direct and up the bottom of the tower, another 80 feet up.
Yeah, so the comment was just with regard to the radio frequency emissions and what the safety measures look like. And if I could just mention too that the EME report will provide a lot of that detailed data, including like occupational limits and public limits. So the EME report, which we will work on obtaining and passing along, will address those concerns.
Any other hands? Again, we'll have more town halls as the process moves forward. Again, this is what we have something.
Yes. So the question is there going to be some kind of market study assessing whether the community would need the tower? Is that what? Yeah. So the question is whether there's going to be a market study that's not created by the applicant or anyone involved with the application process. Perhaps maybe a community study. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah.
What I'm thinking is we could ask the planning committee if they want to send out a survey monkey, at least to get some feedback as to who is interested and what the need is. Is that what you're thinking? When you say member study, how do you thinking this would work? Whether they feel that T-Mobile, say again? Well, this is something we could take to the planning committee to ask them to develop a survey. A suggestion is to email me some of the questions and that maybe we could get some answers before the next town hall. Would that work? I could summarize them. Okay. That'll be on my to-do list.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, it's it's an ongoing conversation, and we're still at the very early stages. So we will be in direct contact with Jennifer about. She has actually, prior to this meeting, had been forwarding any comments or questions that came through from the community. So we like those clear lines of communication, and we're happy to provide any resources that would benefit the community. Yes? Yeah, so the question was, what type of services would the cell antennas provide for the community, including levels of coverage, and will future carriers also be required to meet those needs? So this is what we're proposing right now is what we call a macro facility, meaning that this is like the best type of coverage that any customer could receive for the specific carrier. So for T-Mobile, it would be the most ideal coverage for both a cellular service, and that does include like Wi-Fi, not necessarily fiber Wi-Fi, but just like the Wi-Fi network that we typically use on our phones. So this is the best level of coverage that can be provided by any kind of antenna services or antenna carriers. So you might, I'm sure everyone's also seen sort of like those small cell facilities that are much smaller in size, the microcells. So those, for example, do not provide as vast level of coverage, and that again, that includes like anything related to the cell phone, including phone calls, text messages, and Wi-Fi services. So the question is whether it's just for cell phones or if it's for home internet service plans as well. It is for anything Wi-Fi related. So anything that any of the carriers offer related to Wi-Fi, they will use this tower to provide that benefit to their customers. So anything Wi-Fi related is what it would address. Yeah. Yeah. So the carrier is the one who dictates what the needs are for that specific community. So yes, the carrier, as you mentioned, they decide which antennas to use, which equipment to use based on what the need is for the community. And that need is constantly being assessed by all carriers. This is with Vertical Bridge, and we're directly working with T-Mobile right now, but we've worked with all other carriers as well, and it's the same type of thing. They assess, dropped calls or complaints that are sent, and do extensive assessments to determine which locations are in need of specific coverage needs. So I would say that yes, based on what the community is in need of, that's the type of service that they will be providing. But it would be anything wireless related. How much, so the question is, if, like, what the cost is? Unfortunately, I can't directly answer that question. So the question is, how much would a T-Mobile or any other carrier plan be for a specific household? It's all dependent on how many individuals are in the household, how large the household is, how many cell phones are being used. So that would be contingent. That would be sort of a case-by-case basis. It's not a direct answer that I can provide. Yeah. Yes? I appreciate the comments, and I yes. So the question is, what types of radio emissions would be produced for if future carriers, if and when future carriers co-locate onto the tower? And the follow-up question was whether there would be additional rent allotted to the community, to the HOA based on new carriers that come onto the tower. So in terms of, like I said, like I had mentioned in my presentation, there's a lot of checks and balances to the radio emissions piece. So the Vertical Bridge, they're the tower company. They have a FCC compliance team that is solely dedicated to ensuring that all of their facilities meet FCC standards. They are responsible for submitting reports to the state and on a federal level to ensure that, you know, our licenses are not compromised and that we are meeting the federal standards. We can't just pop antennas on there without any accountability. So with every new carrier, we have to ensure that the we have to ensure that the FCC standards are still being met. So that's kind of the whole checks and balances piece of why there's an FCC compliance team for the towers. So. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. And like I said, it's an open discussion, and we really, you know, for the sake of making sure that the community stays safe, we really want to provide this infrastructure service for you guys. Thank you.